Hey guys, welcome back to First and 10 over here on Clueless Gamers. I'm your host, Pete, joined in a second, as always, by my co-host, Brian. Brian, we're back, man. The week has already kicked off with a bang. I know those Jets fans are eager to hear our thoughts on the game that happened last night. Of course, we're recording this on a Friday. Jets-Texans obviously took place last night. Whole bunch of games and stuff to talk about from last week. And then you will get our picks, as you always do. I'm super excited for this episode. I'm hyped up, Bri. I'm welcoming you in, man. Baseball, it's over. The World Series has ended since the last time we recorded, but here we're about to talk about some football. How you feeling, man? Jets fan. Last night with a big win.
Yeah, a big win. There's a lot to get to because had we done this, a couple days ago, we would have been talking about the debacle in New England
Yeah.
in which they lost and how they might respond to that. And they responded with a win. So we'll say that's a good thing. Still, obviously, a lot of things they have to work through. I mean, to me, any talk about running the table like Aaron Rodgers is talking, we need to kind of pipe down on that. I know the schedule lightens up a bit. They're playing some lesser teams coming up, but the fact is the Jets are still 3-6.
Three
They
and six.
just lost to New England, who's a doormat team.
Yeah.
This team has a long way to go before they prove to me or any fan that they're anything close to for real. So good win last night, lot to get into, but that's kind of my opening thoughts from that standpoint.
No, Brian, I like those thoughts, and let's get into it. The Jets defeat the Houston Texans on the short week, 21-13. It seems like the Jets should play on Thursday night more often because two of their three wins were decently impressive here on Thursday night. Of course, they dominated New England back in, I think it was like week 4, and then, or week 3, one of those games. And then in this one here, a Texans team, at least by record, even though they're very injured, comes in with 6 wins, and the Jets in the second half really controlled that game. 8 sacks on the night, harassed CJ Stroud constantly. And you know what, Brian? I know it's a 2-game sample with this game and last season, but you have to think about, hey, maybe the Jets have a little bit of a recipe for CJ Stroud. He did not look good last year. He ends up getting knocked out in that game. And then you have this game here where he was under duress. He looked lost in some parts of this game as well. The Jets might have a little bit of a recipe there for the Texans. The Texans come in extremely injured. You know, we weren't here live last time, but the news from Sunday that passed, Stephon Diggs with the torn ACL out for the year. Got to feel for him in a contract year. They basically ripped up his contract. He was playing kind of with house money one way or the other if he was going to get the big money or he was going to risk it all. Well, he risked it all there, so that's a devastating injury to him personally and the Houston Texans. Nico Collins has been out the last couple weeks. Hamstrings, extremely iffy injury. Will we be back next week? Who knows? That's a week-to-week injury you're managing. And this offensive line has not only been banged up all year, Bri, for the Houston Texans, they've been downright bad. They are penalized heavily, and we saw that last night, and they cannot block at all. Pass blocking is just atrocious on this team. And we saw Tank Dell come alive last night, but outside of him, you have an older Robert Woods and Schultz. I mean, there's not a lot to work here. And even if there is, you're not going to do anything. Stroud is not going to do anything behind this offensive line. It just seemed like the Jets, even with Reddick being kind of spliced in there on the defensive line, they really got going. And in that second half, those Jets, they really took off. I mean, are you focusing more on kind of the Jets and the big win they had? Or are you looking at this Texans team and going, oh, there might be some trouble coming here with a more difficult schedule in the second half of the year?
Well, I definitely think there's an element of both. I mean, this Texan team to start, it doesn't look like an elite team right now. I know they came in at 6-2. There was a lot of kind of weird things with like when the spread came out that the Jets were
We're
favored,
favored.
and I mean, I for
Yeah.
one was like, how are the Jets favored coming off the loss to New England? You're facing a 6-2 team. You're 2-6. I know you're at home, but like to be a 2.5 point favorite going into the game, I thought was a bit crazy.
Yeah,
But
I
I
agree.
guess you just have to say Vegas. Vegas always seems to know what they're doing. I mean, you can call them crazy, but then the
Some
result is
people
what it
call it a
is.
little suspect. Some people, that's what
Well,
it's things like that where people go, is this stuff a little bit funny? Is this a little bit rigged? Because it's like that's a
there's
weird stat line.
There's definitely the conspiracy theorists out there, and
There
I'll tell
was.
you, the first half of this game, as I'm watching the first half, I'm thinking the fans that were out there at MetLife Stadium on what was a warm Halloween night, they should have been paid to watch what they were seeing rather than pay the ticket. I mean, it was
Yeah.
embarrassing football, really on both sides. The Jets display. I mean, of course, you start with the play where Malachi Corley, the rookie, who has barely been on the field going into this game. He gets an opportunity on an end around where he has a clear path to the end zone. Looks like he scores a touchdown and drops the ball
You
short of
can't
the
do
goal
that.
line.
You just
When I'm
can't.
watching the play, like as I see him go in and the graphic pops up touchdown, I'm looking and I'm like, wait a second. It looked like he might have dropped it a little bit short. And then sure enough, there comes the replay and then the review. And then not only is it not a touchdown, but it's a turnover back to Houston. I mean, that play is just inexcusable. It's
It's awful.
boneheaded. There's just no other way to say it. But the best thing you can say about the Jets is after that horrendous performance in which they were shut out in the first half and Rodgers looked awful. I mean, he missed a number of throws. He missed Devontae Adams. I think it was the first play at the game for the Jets. Would have
Wide
been
open.
a deep throw down the field.
Yep.
The throw goes way out of bounds. He starts like 0 for 4 passing. He had like 15 yards almost through the half. In the second half, this was a different team. I mean, Rodgers really showed out. I mean, who showed out even more was Garrett Wilson. He
Incredible.
made not one but two terrific catches, the second better than the first. I mean, they both were brought in with one hand. The second was just something, of an acrobat. I mean, that was like an Odell Beckham style
It's
catch
crazy.
where he leaps up high and somehow corrals it and somehow gets the shin down in bounds. I mean, that was just an incredible play. So you give them credit. They bounced back. They looked legitimately good in that second half. Rodgers looked good. Obviously, Wilson made the plays. Devontae Adams had the game-sealing touchdown. That was all good. Got the running game going a little bit, so the offense was definitely functioning. And like you said, the defense harassed Stroud all game long. So there were a lot of positives to take away, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that at 3-6, I'm thinking this team's going to reel off, 7 or 8 wins in a row to close out the season. I just need to see a whole lot more. They have showed far too many holes, more so than good stretches where need to see more. Maybe need to see more games on Thursday night because, like
That's
you
what I
say, that
said.
seems to be the recipe for the team. But a win's a win. You'll take it, and now you move on, and you face Arizona next week, and you try to make it back to back and creep back into the playoff picture slowly. That's got to be the approach.
Yeah, I mean, this is what Jet fans are going to argue, right? Like, you got Arizona next week in Arizona. It's a totally winnable game. Then you get in week 11, you get the Colts, totally winnable there as well. Even though I think they will look better with Joe Flacco. You get a late bye in
Yeah.
week 12, and then Seattle. You're playing in here in Jersey. They're not world beaters. The Dolphins, even with Tua, have just not looked like a good football team this year. You get the Jags, and then hey, the Rams are also kind of a similar team. They're in the same boat. I think they're slightly better than the Jets right now, but they're not that great. And you see the injuries that are mounting there again. And then you don't have to worry about the Buffalo game because you're not winning the division, right? Like if you're going to make a run here, you're going to go to the wild card. You lose to Buffalo and you beat Miami in week 18. I mean, you got a shot. You have to look at the kind of the underbelly of the AFC right now. Who do you have in the playoffs right now, right? Let's say all the division winners make it right now. So the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Texans, and the Bills. They're all in automatically. So you got 3 spots left. Who else do you give it to? Maybe the Broncos, and then you could argue Steelers, Bengals,
Chargers.
Chargers, and the Jets, right? Like, I mean, like, and the Colts, I guess, are thrown in there. And half of these teams that you're going to be competing against for kind of those 2 or 3 wildcard spots, you're playing down the stretch. So if you want to have the head-to-head over the Colts, over the Jags, over the Dolphins, all these teams that are kind of mixed in with you, it's right there in front of you. Now, I don't agree as you don't with Rodgers' comments entirely of, oh, we run the table. Well, that's not true. Even though you do have chances for head-to-head wins, you're still 3-6. You're going to need help of other teams beating the wildcard teams that you're competing against. But they have a shot. This is my only thing, Brian. I think you're in agreement with me on this. Jet fans are getting excited. I think it's right to get excited because it was a good win last night. But you played an
Hmm.
undermanned Texans team on a short week. Now I picked the Texans, so it's not like I'm saying I picked the Jets. And that's been the story of my picks the last month. I picked the Jets 3 weeks in a row before this. They've lost every game. I picked them to lose, they win. That's just how that goes.
Yeah.
But we have to look at this and Jet fans have to understand this team is not good. They're not a good football team. So you can't look at them and go, oh, well, we're playing the Cardinals, guaranteed win. We're better than them. Are you? Are you? I think at best you're in the same class as these teams, as the Jags, as the Cardinals, as the Dolphins, as the Colts. You're in their class. And if you want to go out and prove and beat them, go for it. Excellent. You have a good shot of making a run here. But we can't sit here and say, oh, they're definitely, these guys are going to definitely. You just lost to the Patriots 5 days ago. I mean,
Exactly.
we're going to be a top 3 team in the NFL draft, and you lost to the Patriots, who Drake May got knocked out in the beginning of the game, and Jacoby Brissett drove down the field and scored the game-winning touchdown on that defense. I mean, these are things that I feel like have to be a little. We gotta take down the temperature just a bit and put this more into perspective after last night's win.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if we listened to Aaron Rodgers, we'd start putting cayenne pepper in our water. So, I mean, take everything he says with a grain of salt. But I agree. Like, the way I look at it is, yes, the games they have coming up, are they winnable? Sure. At their best, they can win these games. At their worst, they could also lose these
Yeah.
games. So, like, I look at the next 4 games and I say odds are they'll probably split them. They'll probably go 2-2,
Yeah.
and that probably isn't going to be good enough. Like I said, they still have a lot to prove. I mean, the bottom line is Rodgers is 40 years old. We've seen him good, we've seen him bad this year. And the defense, the concern is they can't stop the run. I mean, that was the
We
one
saw it last
Achilles heel
night.
yesterday.
Yep.
Joe Mixon was the one bright spot in the Houston defense. They're not very physical in that regard. You like to see that they're able to get after the quarterback, but it's not a defense that's a lockdown unit by any means.
No.
So they still have a long way to go. But one step that they did take is not having Greg Zerline kick the football. They finally got a new kicker in there,
Yeah.
put him on IR, and so that's a positive.
No, that definitely did help. But if you want to speak to that, because that's a good point about their run defense, here's their next 3 weeks of the running backs they're going to face: James Conner, Jonathan Taylor, and Kenneth Walker. So we're not talking
Yeah.
about any slouches here that you're about to face in the next 3 weeks. And then even after that, you got Miami's rushing attack there in Moster and Achan. That's dangerous. Tank Bigsby's been playing really well for the Jags. Kyron Williams. I mean, you got a lot of good
Hmm.
running backs in running games coming up here. They got to fortify that side of it. Can Reddick help? He's got a half a sack last night. He was intermingled, involved, sure, but I still think, I hate to say it because I do like him as a player, but Sauce Gardner got burnt again last night. He is a very overrated player. I think he's had a very poor season in the secondary there. You need him to play to an all-pro level if you want this defense to be any semblance of what they've been last year or the year before. That ain't helping you there. And the thing with Rodgers being a 40-year-old quarterback, he'll be 41 next month. We see this outside of Tom Brady. When guys get to this age, they could sometimes pull the magic out of the bag and they can look good like Rodgers did in the second half last night. Or he could have whole games like he did against the Patriots or in the first half here against the Texans or any number of games you can. You don't know what you're going to get week to week. And he's at that point where he can't carry a team anymore. And I don't trust the guys around him to elevate him up. And then, we look at guys like, Adams got involved, Garrett Wilson. I wanted to talk to you about how did you, outside of you being a Jets fan, which, I always believe you to be objective, of course. What'd you think about the touchdown call, right? Because I'm very mixed on it, right? Like, it's an amazing catch by Wilson. He catches it, 3rd and 19. It's a huge momentum swing. The Jets never look back. But at the end of the day, Brian, we just saw not long ago Jets Steelers. George Pickens has a very similar play. He double taps one foot. They don't call it a touchdown. Same foot, but he double tapped it twice. Here, it's like a tap plus like the shin simultaneously barely ahead of the knee that's out of bounds. They originally call it no catch and then it gets reversed to a catch, which means you have to have overwhelming evidence, without a doubt evidence, to change it. I thought that was a really questionable touchdown call. And I understand some of the aggravation on the internet that I think sometimes we get blinded by, oh my God, what an amazing play that was. That was like Odell Beckham. Like, that was incredible. And he did several other catches, as you said, that night, last night, Garrett Wilson, where you're like, all right, that wasn't a fluke. We know how good this guy can be. But I don't know how I feel about that touchdown catch. Like, I'm in awe, and I'm also like, I don't know if that was in.
Yeah, I mean, like the rulings are kind of shady because,
Yeah,
like with the Pickens play, like you reference, why is it that if you double tap the one foot, the same foot, that's no good, but you get one foot and then the shin, well, that's fine.
right.
So I mean, to me, like the Wilson play, I actually feel like by the letter of the law, it's a touchdown. Like he gets the foot down, and then the shin comes down before the knee is out of bounds, and the shin constitutes a valid body part that counts in
Yep.
bounds. You know, he got it fully down on the ground, you know, not on the line. So to me, it was a good touchdown. The question is like with the other play, why the ruling if you double tap the same foot, it's not a touchdown. I mean, I think that's the one that they have to look at and
Yeah.
say, you know, how can we fix the rule a bit? Because, I mean, I felt like watching the replay, Wilson call was a good one. The Pickens one, to me, was a little more questionable why it wasn't a touchdown.
Yeah, I just think it is a gray area because it's like, even if you want to take the Pickens one out, I just think it's a weird rule that the shin on the same leg that is inbounds, the entire other leg's out of bounds, that constitutes enough. And especially too, like as he's going to the ground, you also from another angle look at it, does he have complete control of it? Does the ground aid him? Like there was a lot of elements to that catch where it felt a little weird. I mean, if I'm a fan last night of the Texans, I'm pissed off. Like that was a strange call where it's like great play. Maybe it's letter of the law, but I don't know if it is. It kind of feels like a gray area there. And this goes back to something that we and everyone in media has been talking about for over 10 years, probably since the Des Bryant catch game against the Packers. Like, what is a
Uh,
catch and what is not a catch?
yeah.
And it's like every season
Hmm.
we have all of these things happen where it's like, okay, well, I don't understand how the shin is worth more than a double tap of the foot. Like, who is determining these rules and what constitute the actual grounds? What's the thought process that's actually there that says, oh yeah, he's in the end zone, we're gonna reverse that? It's just weird.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you summed it up well there. But the bottom line is the Jets will take it. I mean,
They'll take
if
it.
they decided that wasn't a touchdown, you know, there would have been a revolt at MetLife Stadium. As desperate as they are to see something go their way. I mean, the first half, you had fans with the bags over their heads. I
Yep.
mean, it was not a pretty sight. So they needed something to feel good about. Wilson provided it with the two touchdowns. You get out of there with a win, and you take the positives you can.
Yeah, I mean they were booing on the first drive. It looked bad. I mean Rodgers I think had something like 33 or 36 yards in the first half. He was like 7 for 14. I mean he looked terrible. At least this team does have
Mm.
weapons. If they could play as somewhat of a cohesive unit, they could do something. I don't know how far they can go because I still feel like they're not a team, and also they're just not well coached. I mean that's the bottom line. They're not well coached. You look at Jeff Ulbrich. I mean, he's trying, but like he just doesn't have it. Like this, he's not a head coach. We all know it, and that's a huge part determining if this team could even get close to the playoffs. I said before the year, I said 8 or 9 wins. I feel more confident in 7 or 8 wins right now, but hell, maybe 7 and 10 at this point gets you in the AFC. I mean, you never know.
I mean, that would be a surprise if you make the playoffs at 7-10. But that would show you how weak the AFC is. I mean, come on, you got to be at least 500 or better. I know we saw your Charlie Whitehurst Seahawks back in the day and
Pain.
what they did against the Rams, which you
Yeah.
often were reminded by a certain former classmate of ours. But yeah,
Yeah.
7-10. I feel like you got to be better than
I,
that.
I just think we look at it. The NFC is significantly better than the AFC last year. This year, like the AFC is very top heavy. It's really the Bills, the Chiefs, and I would still throw the Ravens in there. Then I kind of feel like the Texans are a step below, and you maybe put the Steelers on that level, and then everybody else is kind of just garbage. I mean, it's just the truth. Like there's a lot of middling to garbage that's in the rest of the AFC.
Yeah,
And yes, I am a little bit disrespecting the Broncos and the Chargers. I don't believe in either of those teams going that far. I'm sorry, hate me. So it's just I don't see a lot there. And then we'll look at, before we conclude, the Texans' upcoming schedule. This is a really bad loss for the Texans. I get it, as I said at the top, they're undermanned, but next week, you get the Lions coming up. Then you have the Cowboys, the Titans. That should be a win. Jags is a division game, so you don't know how that could go. Maybe if they get hot. They get a very late bye in week 14. And then Dolphins, we'll see where they're at. Chiefs, Baltimore, and Tennessee again. And again, the two Tennessee games are still division games. You have no idea what's going to happen in those games. We always know division games are relatively played close. I would be worried if I was a Texans fan right now. It just doesn't seem, this was a night to lose to a team that is reeling, that is coming off one of their worst losses in recent memory to the Patriots. All the expectation they had, and to lose in the fashion they lose, were being basically dead and overwhelmed in the second half. We've said all year there's something amiss with this Texans team, and the more they get hurt, the more it comes out. It's not great signs for CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear he has not played nearly as well as he did in what was a tremendous rookie season, whether you want to call it a sophomore slump or
Yeah.
whatever the case, he hasn't played as well. You could blame it on the weapons being hurt. I mean, look, a lot of teams have players that are out of the lineup. It's part of playing in the NFL. And Stroud, he's not making up for it like he did a year ago. We know the offensive line hasn't played well, but I mean, yesterday he's like 8 for his first 20 throwing the football. I mean, it's under 50% completion percentage is not going to get it done. We've talked about with, his division mate there and Anthony Richardson. You cannot win completing that level of
Saw
your
that this week.
passes. So I don't think the division is in danger for them just because I don't think any of the other teams are that good. But I don't look at this team right now and think, wow, they're poised to make a run in the AFC this year.
No, I would agree with that, and I do feel like they're still going to win this division by about 2 games at least, but I don't know at the moment, man. Like, it feels like they could host a playoff game and get bounced in the first round. Like, that kind of seems like the
Yeah.
vibe. The more the injuries stack up, I could see it. But hey, shout out to Joe Mixon. I mean, that guy, what a difference he brings to that team when he's there and he's not there. It's a completely different offense. Brian, let's switch back to week 8, and let's jump back to the Texans Colts game. And the reason why I'm talking about the Texans again is I really want to focus on the Colts side of it, because the big news this week, Anthony Richardson gets benched, the young 4th overall pick. Just a couple of years ago, only 10 starts under his belt with all the injuries. He gets benched after this game, in a game in which he completed, once again, less than 50% of his passes, 10 for 32. We've seen a lot of games this season. The Allen game, this game. We've seen a lot of bad quarterback play this season. And you can't go 10 for 32 in the NFL, 175 yards, a touchdown to pick. And then the play that everybody's talking about, right? He kind of runs around, defensive lineman going after him. He goes out of bounds and then kind of taps on his helmet and calls himself out of the game on a 3rd down play, and has to have Joe Flacco come in, and they ask him about it afterwards. And he goes, yeah, I'll just be honest with you, I was tired. He was winded. And I get that you're running around. I understand that. I couldn't do it. But I'm not a professional athlete, Brian. This guy is cut. He should be in shape. But is he? Because that is not something you should be saying that should happen to you. And you certainly shouldn't be that honest with the media. Sometimes you could be a little too honest with the media. And that was a bad look. And I think, coupled that with his poor play this season in the games he's played, he's also been injured. Shane Steichen, who I do believe is a good head coach, decides to make a move to Joe Flacco, almost 40 years old. And I don't know if it's the end of Richardson's career with the Colts. I don't think that's the case. But kind of to take a breather, or maybe it could be the end of his season for the rest of this year, because he clearly needs development. having a 40%, anywhere in the 40% completion percentage in the NFL is atrocious. You can't have that in college. Hell, you can't have that on good high school teams. It is not good enough. It's not getting it done. And everyone, I think, the kind of Josh Allen has poisoned the well a little bit, so to say, because he had a very poor percentage at Wyoming in college, and everyone saw him and the drastic improvement that he had, where now he's completing near 70% of his passes. Well, he's the outlier, Bry. Most quarterbacks, pretty much no quarterback before him, has ever done that and has not done it since. And we need to start looking at more the average of the situation more than the outlier. What did you think about not only the loss that the Colts had on Sunday, but the decision to switch quarterback, and do you think it'll make a big difference for Indianapolis this season?
Yeah, well, that's clearly the story, is the quarterback situation, which came out about midweek. Was it Tuesday or
Yeah.
Wednesday when the news came? I wasn't entirely surprised. I mean, because as we've outlined, the play has been subpar from Richardson. I mean, you're just not going to survive playing at the highest level when you're completing that low of a percentage of your passes. It just simply isn't going to be good enough. This is a league right now that makes it easy on quarterbacks
So
to complete
easy.
passes. I mean, you have bad quarterbacks that complete 60 to 65% of their
Yep.
passes. So if you're below 50, I mean, you're really behind the bar here.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, there was the situation, that was well documented also, where he asks out of the game, he's tired. We understand that. To me, that was just like the cherry on top on the
100%.
of the decision to bench him. Like if that happened and he's playing at an elite level, you're not making this
No.
move. Like it has to be more about his lackluster play than it is asking the team out of a play, because he's tired. So obviously not a good look, not something that you ever see from a leader of your
No.
football team, which is what the quarterback is supposed to be. To me, that's like down on the list compared to how poorly he's playing at the position. And then the fact is that you have an option behind him that's arguably better. I mean, we've
Yeah.
talked about this. Flacco right now is the better player. I mean, if they had some schlub as the backup, I'm not sure that they make this move. But you have Joe Flacco. We know what he's been throughout his career, and in the time that he's filled in for Richardson this year, he's looked good. I mean, we
He
know
has.
he's can make mistakes, but he can sling the football still at this advanced age. So Colts are a better team with Flacco under center right now. I mean, that's all there is to it. You drafted Richardson knowing that he was a project to begin with. Clearly, he just needs more seasoning. He needs a
Yeah.
break, whatever you want to call it. But he's not the guy right now. Like, you have Flacco. He's not the future, obviously. You hope Richardson still is, but you're trying to win games. You're trying to get into this playoff mix, which, as we've talked about how weak the AFC is, they've got a chance
They
to
do.
remain in there. And Flacco, right now, he flat out gives the team a better chance, and it's probably not even close.
Yeah, I've seen a lot more. I feel like the media reaction is always weird to these situations. And I see that a lot of people, I think, they're quick to rush to the defense of the young man, right? Of the young QB, and go, "Oh, this is ridiculous. They gave up after him on 10 games. What if we gave up on insert this quarterback?" The bottom line of it, Bry, is those other men in the locker room, they're other grown men with families. They get paychecks, okay? They care about winning. If you're on the team, if you're Josh Downs or Pittman or Jonathan Taylor or Quentin Nelson or any of these guys, and you're watching your quarterback not only tap himself out of the game, that was the cherry on top, but he's injured often in his young career, and he just makes boneheaded turnovers. He has basic throws, basic and out route, a basic screen pass, massively overthrow, underthrow. I mean, the guy, 44 completion percentage this year. At some point, you cannot get up as the head coach and look at all your other guys, all your other 52 guys on the team, and go, "You know what? This guy gives us the best chance to win on Sunday." That's BS. And developing is one thing. We understand that. Sometimes it's trial by fire. Sometimes it's like Jordan Love. You sit for 3 years. Whatever it is, guys do not come out and play this poor and keep their job. I don't care if they've had 10 starts. And you couple everything else with it. He's been an upstanding citizen. We get all that. But he's kind of a little loosey-goosey with the leadership. He is an injury-prone player, and he's not making the layups. You can't keep a guy out there and expect every other player on the team who wants to win, who wants to go for the playoffs, and wants to build for their career, and every career is so short. They do not want to hear, hey, we need to get through this hardship and develop him to build for our future. Nobody wants to hear that if you're another player. And when, as you said, you have a significant, viable backup, you have to make... We've seen Joe play 2 games this year. He played well in both games, including getting them a win. And the other one, they lost 37-34 to shoot out to the Jags. You can't turn to those guys and go, I still think Richardson's better than Flacco. Ridiculous. And you have to look at his stat line this year. Not only is a 44 completion percentage, he's only played 6 of their games, 958 yards, 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions this season. 57.2 QB rating, which for reference last year, Bri, in only the 4 games that he played last year, 87.2 QB rating. So think about it, that's not even good. That's barely league average last year. Look at that massive drop off this year. And then even running the ball. Yeah, he has a touchdown. He also has 6 fumbles. Like, he's only lost 2 of them, but still, like, he's a turnover machine. He's not making the basic plays. Then he gives you a PR bad situation there and a lack of leadership. How could you not make the move? And I think the media's reaction to trying to over-defend the young quarterback, he's getting paid well. He's not overly sensitive, I'm sure. Get over it. He'll get another chance to start. It ain't right now.
And I mean, we see, teams make the quarterback changes, and before long, the guy ends up being back in. Just look at Carolina. Bryce Young is already back quarterbacking.
Yep.
We thought at the time, that they made the move and go to Andy Dalton. We thought Bryce Young's future in Carolina was finished, that he would never play in Carolina again. Well, he's back as the starting quarterback. So things happen. You get the job back. I mean, especially when you have quarterbacks who are 40 years old. Who knows how healthy they're going to stay. So odds are Richardson's going to get another crack at it here. But right now, you roll with Flacco, who I've made the point, I think he might be a better quarterback now than he was the latter years in Baltimore.
Yeah,
I mean, after
isn't that
he
scary?
He signed that big contract right after the Super Bowl run where he played great. I mean, he had a fantastic run. They won the whole thing. They then signed into the big money. And those few years there on the back end were not very good. And yet he's held on to a career here as a backup and gotten his chance with the Jets, with the Browns, now here with Indy. So he's just, that cool customer that just keeps going.
I just don't think, I think it's a great point, and I just don't think you could look at it and go, all right, Joe Flacco just got the Browns to the playoffs last year. We see how bad they're playing this season. You're right here. You're right there with a weakened AFC. If you have a chance to make a wild card, you take it. Bottom line. And the thing is that, Richardson is going to get another shot, as we just said. But we also have to admit, sometimes you already know these quarterbacks just don't have it, right? Maybe he's not good. Maybe he's not a good NFL player. I don't think Bryce Young, no matter what team he goes to, is going to be a good NFL player. I just don't think he has it. I understand Carolina is terrible, but I don't think if you put him on a decent team at some other part of the league, I don't think he's lighting it up. There's just some guys who just don't fit in the league. That's okay. It was okay to admit, hey, Josh Rosen, let's give up on him after a year. No matter how bad the Cardinals are, this guy doesn't have it. You can just sometimes tell. Just the bottom line.
And Zach Wilson, I think, fits that example perfectly. I mean, how much of Zach Wilson do we need to watch before it was like, you know what, this guy's probably not an NFL quarterback. Even though he was the second pick of the draft, he doesn't have the mechanics. He can throw the ball, but It's just not enough there. And he's a backup now, and that's probably what his future is going to be.
And I see a lot of people make the comparison like, oh, well, look at Sam Darnold right now, or look at what Geno Smith has been. It's like, well, first of all, no offense. They came both from the Jets organization that has been historically dysfunctional, okay? So that's not really a barometer for quarterbacks failing careers. That's number one. But number two, also, I do feel like those guys, especially Darnold, have a more upside and talent than a Bryce Young does right now. And sure, you could see the Anthony Richardson talent, but it also comes with, oh, he has a big arm, he could run around, he's a strong guy, but he is injury prone, he was in college, and he does have an accuracy issue, which is almost historically an unsolvable QB trait. If you are not accurate in college, you do not become more accurate in the NFL. Stop thinking about Josh Allen. He is the outlier. And so for every one or two where, oh, Darnold or Geno, it's like, maybe I missed that. Maybe these guys are decent when they're in a good situation. There are tenfold other quarterbacks that are just bad from the start, no matter what team they're on. And I think that we're seeing that play out right now.
Yeah, I don't have anything more to add.
Brian, let's switch over to one other game that I need to talk about. And this is more of a referendum on me. Okay, this is a personal thing. This is me taking some accountability to the audience and to you. Let's switch over to the Eagles and the Bengals. The Eagles win 37-17 in a game where, I'm just dumb. Let's just be honest. I have said all year on this podcast, hey, maybe the Bengals are not a good team. Why does everyone keep pretending they're a good team? I gave a whole speech about that even last week. And then what do I go do? What does my clown self go do? I still pick the Bengals anyway. Like, I was the reason. I told everybody this might not be a good football team. The Eagles are a better football team. And I said, desperation-wise, they're going to come out and win this. Even though Higgins at that point was in the reports with a thigh contusion that he probably wasn't going to play. And I still picked them anyway. That's shame on me. That's the worst pick maybe of the season that I've had. I was so aggravated with myself as this game was unfolding. Where early on it looked like I was going to go back and forth, and then the Eagles just, from really the late second quarter on, just grabbed the Bengals by the throat and did not look back or let up on the situation at all. Brian, I maybe you'll take the Eagles side of it, but I'm going to take that Bengals side of it. They're 3-5 right now. We just had the conversation about how bad the AFC is. They still have a playoff shot. They're not dead. I totally understand that. But when are we going to admit? I'm listening to myself now. I'm going back to that. When are we going to admit, and when is the rest of the media, for the most part, going to admit, this team is not good? Let's just be real. The Eagles are a good team. Sure, they lost them. But they've now lost 4 games at home this season, Bri. At some point, the Bengals and Joe Burrow have to be held accountable and cannot be living off of their 2021 playoff run. When is that going to happen? Is it after this week, or does it take more losses for that to come? What do you think about that?
Yeah, and it's funny too because you bring up the 2021 playoff run, and while it was a good run, it wasn't a Super Bowl victory. So, I mean, we give them that much credit for a Super Bowl loss. Right. I mean, your team won the game. And look, Burrow is a good player. We know at times he's been a great player. This season has been a frustrating one for his team. I mean, it started from week 1 where they go out there and you play a lesser New England team and they lose. And you thought, okay, week 1 gets some fluky results. Maybe that was just the case here. But no, they start with, 3 straight losses. And then, they start to get back into it a little bit, but they're just not all the way there. It's the bottom line.
Bro, they haven't beaten a winning team. They have not beaten a winning team this whole season. None of the teams they've beaten have been over 500. I mean, what are we talking about?
Right. I mean, we're going to get excited about them beating Carolina. I mean, that's
and
what
they didn't even look good in that game.
Yeah, and like you said, in this game, they started out, they looked pretty good. They had the lead in the first half, but once Philly got control of this game, it was Philly all the way through. Yep. I mean, the turning point, I think, was that big touchdown, perfect ball from Hurts to Devontae Smith. Yep. And then it was like from there, cruise control afterwards. So, yeah, I mean, like on the Philly side, had some ups and downs early. I kind of wrote them off as like a Super Bowl contender because there were a lot of kind of weird things going on, capped off with the Nick Sirianni taking shots with the fans. But this team has, turned a corner, I think, now. They've gotten healthier on offense. They weren't playing as well when they were down both Brown and Smith. Now they've got, kind of the full band together there. The defense is starting to play better. They stifled the Giants the week before. it's a team that we know is not short on talent. It's a matter of having the
Yeah, the
cohesiveness.
head.
Lately, they're kind of showing that. Yeah, that's it. I mean, they're their own worst enemy. But if they play to their talent level, they're very dangerous in this NFC.
Yeah, I want to give them some credit. I still don't think they're coached that well. I don't think Nick Sirianni is a good coach, but they do feel like they've turned a corner in these last 3 weeks. And every week they've been getting better and better, and the wins are becoming more and more dominant. The defense has really been underrated. They have played really well, starting a lot of young players on that defense, including 2 rookies in the back end. And they shut down, for whatever, Higgins or not, they shut down the Bengals offense. Think about it, the Bengals started this game with a 19-play, 10-minute and 4-second touchdown drive. And the Eagles were still able to rebound after that. And I really think the game turned on. Evan McPherson misses a field goal, and that was it. The Eagles after that never looked back when that happened. That was kind of the turning point of that game. They have looked good. This is probably the last couple weeks, especially this game, is the best Jalen Hurts has really looked this season. I think he's
Yeah.
played well. Barkley's been great all year. And yeah, as most teams are, as you saw the Rams last Thursday, when you have both your big wide receiver horses back in the lineup, of course your offense looks completely different. We're seeing that play out. They might get Goddard back coming this week. That's another weapon to add to this offense. And they are dangerous. In them and the Commanders feel like the two teams that could easily both make the playoffs in the East and the NFC East. I just have to wonder, how much time are we going to keep giving the Bengals? Are they going to be in it all the way till week 18 when they're what, 4-11? Like how much longer do we keep playing this game? If the AFC wasn't as down as they were, like they're actually very much in the similar situation as the Jets, where they should be better, and the bottom line is they're not. And the only difference with the Jets is they are living off of their previous playoff success. Maybe they're just the Bengals that are cheap, that have not paid any of their top players, have let too much talent get away, and have maybe left Joe Burrow, who is a very good quarterback, high and dry.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think you have to question Zach Taylor. Might just
Yep.
not be that good as a head coach. I mean, he might be a guy who's not able to lift this team above its talent level. That, yes, they got to the Super Bowl when kind of all the pieces were in place, but losing a lot in free agency and being kind of cheap as an organization, starting from the top there. They've lost a lot of pieces. They've had a lot of players hurt. I mean, T. Higgins consistently being out of
Consistently.
action has really plagued that offense. I mean, because when he's in there giving Burrow that second option with Chase, you know how good Chase is, but when you have both of them, that's really a dynamic pair. But he's just too oft injured. I mean, it's always
Yeah.
something with this guy, and it looks like he's going to miss another game this week. So it's probably going to be the Chase show, and they don't have enough. They don't have enough of a running game. The defense has been leaky all year. There's just too many holes.
And that right there is spoke to their cheapness as an organization. They should have kept Joe Mixon. We've seen how great he looks so far for the Houston Texans. And you know what? Tyler Boyd should have been kept on this team as well. We're a big fan of him. He's an underrated player. He's done nothing in Tennessee because they're
Right?
terrible.
It's just rotting.
For
Yeah.
both of them, for both Boyd and the Bengals, they should, at the reunion, at the trade deadline, make a reunion. They should figure out, trade a 6th-round pick, get him back on the team, figure out he has familiarity with the offense in Joe Burrow. When Higgins is out, this is a guy that you could consistently go to. If I'm them right now, I'm on the phone. It won't even be that expensive. Figure it out. Get him the hell out of Tennessee. Bring him right back in. It's a seamless fit. He knows the offense. Call it a day. That's exactly what I would be doing.
I mean that I don't see any issue with that. It's not a move that's going to put them over the top, but he was a guy who was a key contributor to that offense. Clearly, a guy that had Burrow's trust, was a third down weapon. I mean, he sometimes
Yeah.
was the guy on third down in that offense.
Yep.
Chase and T. Higgins would be covered, and Boyd was capable of making explosive plays with run after the
Yep.
catch. He was a nice player, and now in Tennessee you don't even hear of him. I mean, is he even on the field? I don't know exactly what the situation is there. I mean, Tennessee is kind of a
Is
weird offense. Like
horrific.
Calvin Ridley, we didn't hear of for like 5 weeks, and then he had over 100 yards and a half of football. So I don't know
Yep.
exactly what's going on down there with their receivers, but that's the Titans.
Yeah, they trade Hopkins, and then, Ridley has that great start, and then the entire team disappears against the shellacking they took from the Lions. Yeah, that's a weird situation. Call the Titans, Bengals, and get Tyler Boyd back. That's my advice for that situation. And again, to cap that off, shame on me. I should have stuck on my gut and picked the Eagles. That's solely my fault. Brian, let's switch over to some Week 9 picks. We're doing pretty good on picks this season. Let's jump into it. No London games again. It starts off with the 1 o'clock games. Cowboys, Falcons, a really weird game because I could see the Falcons just completely laying an egg coming off the win last week against the Bucs, and the Cowboys aren't that great. But then the Cowboys also have just like these random games. They're on the road where they seem to play better this season, and they could kind of come to life and win it. It just, I'm so back and forth on what's going to happen in this game, who's going to win it, who you got in this one.
Yeah, as I've looked at this slate of games, this is one that, for whatever reason, I've just kind of talked myself into taking the Cowboys. I mean, I feel like people are getting a little carried away with this team. And look,
Yeah.
you and I both came on at our first show of the season. We were not high on this team,
No.
and it has proven to be. I mean, they've proven to be worse than we could have thought,
Yeah.
honestly. The reality, it's not like they're 1-6. I mean, they're 3-4 right
Yeah,
now.
3-4.
Yeah, 3-4. So they haven't played well, but it's not like they're a doormat team. I mean, people are acting
No.
like they're like the Carolina Panthers. It's really getting a little carried away. We know they're without their big guns on defense, and Parsons is going to come back at some point. I don't think it's going to be this week, but I think he's starting to make his way back on the practice field. This team is still capable, like you point out, that I think the game you really were talking about where they kind of have a surprising result, the Pittsburgh game is the one that stands out. They're
Yeah.
facing a team with a much better record in that hostile environment, and they pull that game out of the fire late. So Atlanta has been a little tricky this year. They've had games where they've exploded on offense. Good win last week. They've got 2 wins under their belt against Tampa. But I see this being a bit of a letdown spot. And I just see the Cowboys saying, you know what, we're not as bad as everybody's making us out to be. And I see them getting a road win here.
Yeah, I thought this is one where we were going to be split on, but I'm also taking the Cowboys in this one. I just don't think they're as bad as their record shows. They've played some good teams. They did show grit in that Steelers win where it was a tough night sledding the entire night for Dak. And at the end of the day, he led a touchdown drive on 4th and goal to Tolbert, won that game, a huge win. I mean, if they're 2-5 right now, I can totally understand why the sky's falling. But the Falcons just have these weird games where like they look good one week and then the next week they lay a complete and utter dud. I know they got 2 wins in a row, but in the Carolina win, they didn't look that impressive. You're playing a Bucs team that was very injured. I could see the Cowboys, as I said, playing better on the road. And I think in a close game, I don't think it's going to be any blowout one way or the other. In a close game, I could see the Cowboys pulling this one off. The Broncos go to the Ravens, Bry, and again, 2 teams 5-3, 2 teams that I don't think are on equal playing fields. I'm taking Baltimore in the bounce back win. Last week, everyone's high on the Browns. It was an emotional win. I understand all of that stuff. They certainly look better with Jameis Winston. That's not even shocking, and there's no denying that. However, the Ravens, I mean, they got passes right there, and they're losing them in the sun, and it's hitting them in the chest. They had multiple chances in this game. Lamar did not play as poorly as you would think he did. He actually played pretty well. He just had really no support in this game. I'm taking them for a bounce back. I don't see them losing 2 in a row, and this is a good kind of barometer because the Broncos are a solid team, could end up being a playoff team. Now getting back to it seems like the Ravens played down to their competition, lost to the Raiders, lost to the Browns. I feel like now they'll take the Broncos seriously. They'll pull this one out.
Yeah, and I mean, they're a heavy favorite in this game. I mean, you're talking about nearly 10 points, which is pretty sizable in the NFL.
Wild.
And I know Denver has played pretty well. I mean, last week they're playing Carolina, and I actually appreciate the candidness of Sean
I
Payton
did too.
after the game where, he's asked, what did he think about his defense? He said, well, I liked it, but that's not a good offense we played. And, you don't hear that from coaches, but the reality is, if everyone in the media says it, talk radio, if anyone says it, the coach who's going against him can say it. I mean, he has the right.
Yeah.
It's not exactly an outlandish thing. And Sean Payton, he can be a good soundbite in the pressers. But this is obviously a big step up here. You're traveling. You're facing Baltimore, coming off a loss. I mean, to me, this has all the ingredients. I thought the Ravens in that week 2 spot, it was a situation where they would cruise against the Raiders, and somehow that didn't pan
Yeah.
out. But I got to believe, with Lamar and company, I will say though, like if you can slow down Derrick Henry, that is the biggest factor in beating this Ravens team. I mean, when he's going off, you have no chance. If you hold him down, then that's when you have a chance to beat this team. But I think they have too many weapons all around. I'm taking the Ravens.
Yeah, it's also I liked Sean Payton's candor as well. That they asked him like, oh, several Panther players were kind of jawing at you at the end of the game, saying you were running up the score, and they won 28-14. And he goes, listen, I've had teams where I'm up 28, by 28 points in the fourth quarter, and I've lost. Like, we're in the NFL. You need to keep playing the games. It wasn't like that Miami, Broncos game. Like, it wasn't a 50-point discrepancy. They needed to still score. They were still, executing their offense. And I think more when you're trying to get too cute and not score, that's a more propensity to make mistakes, for guys to get hurt. I didn't see anything wrong with that. It was only a 2-touchdown lead. I mean, he's not complaining about the Dolphins dropping 70 on him last year. I don't think anyone has a right to complain that, oh, he's running an offense up 2 touchdowns. Okay, and play better. It's in the NFL. You want to stop them? Stop them. So I do like, even though I do think he could be a little bit of a kind of a pompous jerk sometimes, I did appreciate his candor after that game this week. I'll agree with that. The Dolphins play the Bills, and again, this is nothing I'm going to be fooled by. I'm picking the Bills. The Dolphins are just not good. Let's just be real. They looked better. I mean, significantly better with Tua last week, but when push came to shove against the Cardinals, who are not a great team as well, they could not make the necessary plays to steal that game. And even though I think the Bills have gotten a lot of their wins against kind of mediocre to bad teams, the Dolphins are a bad team. They're going to win this game. They're going to win this game comfortably. We've seen this game in week 2. The Bills are going to win this one in comfortable fashion.
Yeah, you lamented your pick of the Eagles and Bengals last week. The one that I'm lamenting is picking Seattle over Buffalo. That was not one that worked out. I mean, the Bills absolutely thrashed the Seahawks, which I did not see coming in Seattle. That was an impressive performance by them. Yeah, I'm with you. I think the Bills all the way here. I think they've proven they are one of the better teams in this league now. I mean, Josh Allen is playing at an MVP level. We know he had the one clunker in Baltimore. Outside of that, though, he's really played fantastic football. So it doesn't matter what weapons he has in there. Shakir is back in the lineup now. You got Kincaid at tight end. So they have enough with James Cook running the football. And Miami, I wasn't sold on them last week, even with Tua returning. I ended up being right as the Cardinals mounted a rally to beat them. So yeah, I'm taking Buffalo. I feel like they've had the Dolphins' number lately, and I think they get another win here.
Yeah, I mean, they've absolutely dominated the Dolphins. And also, it felt like the Ravens were a bad matchup for the Bills. It's just something that just doesn't work in there. You want to talk about a great matchup? It's this Miami Dolphins team. I think the Bills are going to be just fine. The Saints and the Panthers will play each other here in a matchup of two teams that are going to pick in the top 5. Everyone, again, got excited with the Saints. They have lost since starting 2-0 and scoring some of the most points we've ever seen through 2 weeks in NFL history. Have lost 6 straight games. They are not good. Spencer Rattler is going to be starting again. I guess Bryce Young is starting for the Panthers. Who cares? It doesn't matter. These teams are both terrible. Deontay Johnson just got traded for the Panthers. He was so excited when he got that call that he got the hell off that team. I guess I'm picking the Saints because they have a slightly more talent, but honestly, whoever wins this, it doesn't matter. I mean, this game is literally, I guess the only way it matters is for draft positioning, and that means you probably want to lose this one. Give me the Saints.
And Deontay Johnson, not only does he get out of Carolina, but he goes to Baltimore.
Yeah.
I mean, what a terrific
Yeah.
addition for that offense, which is already loaded. You give Lamar another weapon. I mean, that's just a perfect fit there. So really just a good trade for the Ravens. I'm probably going to surprise you here. I mean, maybe it's not that big of a surprise.
No.
Well, I have the final score. It's like I'm going to go 13-9.
Absolutely.
And I've got Carolina.
Yeah, I can totally see
I'm
that.
taking them
Yeah.
to win this one at home here. The Saints, the 2-0 start feels like it might as well have been 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like it was another lifetime ago. and they have just been brutal since. And now you get a divisional game. These can be unpredictable.
Hmm.
I have no love, of course, for Carolina's ability and Bryce Young in particular, but I just see a halfway decent performance here at home against a team that is struggling mightily. Give me Carolina to pull it out, give their home fans something to cheer about. I don't know why, but I'm taking a stab at it.
Honestly, whatever team you pick in this game, you got a good shot. I mean, they're both awful, so who cares? The Raiders play the Bengals in a game that is kind of the slightly better version of the game we just talked about, right? Like both of these teams are not good, but they're definitely better than the Saints and the Panthers. I guess I'm gonna ride with the Bengals. I mean, they should beat the freaking Raiders, but can you
Yeah.
guarantee they're gonna beat them? They're only one win better than them. So like, it's just and also too, it's not even just about I'm watching the win loss column. I watch the games. Like there's they have more talent than the Raiders, but would you be shocked if the Raiders pulled the upset? I wouldn't, but for now, I'm taking the Bengals. They better win this damn game.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be shocked, but I am riding with Cincinnati at home. I mean, to me, this is a game. You're at home against a lesser team. This has to be a big day for the Cincinnati offense with Burrow, with Jamar Chase. I mean, Vegas is just not very good. That's all there is to it. Brock Bowers is a shining light there. Clearly, that was a good draft pick. Some of these first round tight ends have not panned out. He looks like the real deal.
Yeah.
So it looks like they got something there. Outside of that, you traded Devontae Adams. Jacoby Myers hasn't really played much this year. You're playing Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Aiden O'Connell got hurt. There's just not a lot to like with that team.
Oh man.
So I have to believe Cincinnati at home gets their offense going. This is a game they need to, put up 30 points
Yeah.
if they're going to show people that they mean business and that they're, resemble anything close to a playoff team.
Agree with that. Chargers go to the Browns, and the Browns, as we talked about, big win last week. They look significantly better with Jameis Winston, which is not a shock, but I'm taking the Chargers in this. I know the Chargers are the Chargers. I know they can do weird crap, and they're not going to score a ton of points. I totally understand that. But I just think when it comes down to it, they have the better quarterback. They have more talented players. They are playing for something. They're going for that wild card. Could I see them letting down and the Browns winning 2-0? Sure. But I'm going to believe in Harbaugh's team, and I'm taking in a real ugly matchup, which is every Jim Harbaugh game, I'm taking the Chargers.
I have a close, low scoring game. I mean, I could see this being like
19-14.
13 to 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I might go even lower than that. I mean, these teams both have struggled. The Chargers, they've been decent, but their offense really has not produced a lot of points. Well, they had a decent game last week against New Orleans, but Herbert, it's still been kind of underwhelming play from the guy that we're still waiting to see him take the next step. It just might not ever happen. I mean, I hope it does.
Yeah.
I hope he plays to his talent level, but so far it just continues to be kind of underwhelming. But the Browns, we know they made the quarterback switch that was necessitated by the Watson injury. Winston, I've never been a big Winston fan. Clearly, they're better with him, but I think the Chargers, in the end, win a tight, low scoring, kind of physical game. I think this is one where the defenses both kind of dominate.
I would push back a little bit that I think actually, I understand we're waiting for Justin Herbert to take that huge step, but I think under Harbaugh, they're going to be good. They are rebuilding. Lad McConkey's a rookie. He's their main weapon, and he's not a number one. I actually think, in spite of everything that has happened and kind of them stripping down the offense, all the injuries they've had, including to Herbert himself, I actually think he's played pretty well this year. I really think they are 4-3 because of the games that he has played and thrown for 300 yards, really commanding the offense, not doing too much. His statistics might not wow you, but I think on the field, he's actually played pretty well. So I'm going to give him a little bit of credit when I have criticized him in the past. The Commanders go to the Giants, and the Giants, again, they try. They're not one of these bad teams that's just terrible. They do try. There are good players on this team. But when Daniel Jones is your quarterback, I'm not trying to be mean. He's not good. They're not good. The Commanders, they get this insane win that I was watching live last week. They really didn't play well offensively. You could tell Jaden Daniels is still gingerly. He's not having the same zip on the ball with the oblique injury, but they're a better team than the Giants. And this isn't the same rivalry where historically in the last like 5 or 6 years, the Giants have really owned the Commanders. They've had their number. And it's a new day in Washington. Give me the Commanders.
Oh, it is most certainly a new day. I mean, that is a team that is finding ways to win games. No more so evidence than last week. I mean, they had the lead most of the way, though they weren't doing much. It was like 9-0 there for a while, and the Bears end up rallying, taking the lead, and then you get the improbable Hail Mary. I mean, just a crazy play where you have the Bears defender that's taunting the crowd
Tyreek
before the
Stevenson,
play
yeah.
even develops. I mean, how idiotic can you be? And that's just one that, if I'm a head coach, come on, I got to sit that guy down.
He's getting benched, and I'm finding a way to fine him 100%.
Conduct detrimental to the team.
Yep.
I mean, come on. And then he's
the
one who ends up touching the ball, right? And then it goes into the hands of Noah Brown for what was just an incredible play. I mean, the likes of which you see once, maybe a decade. So, I mean, Jaden Daniels continues to have the magic touch. Yeah, I'm taking Washington all the way. The Giants, they are what they are. They've been in some games. They played reasonably well last week, the Monday Nighter in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
They were in that game, right? It was within a score. They moved the ball against a tough Steelers defense, but again, they had trouble finishing drives. Again, Daniel Jones made his share of mistakes. And again, the Giants just showed that they're short on talent. I mean, let's call it what it is. To me, on the Giants, I am not making a head coaching change after this season. I don't care if they finish 4-13. I am riding it out with Daboll for at least another year because you cannot continue in this vicious cycle of firing coaches every 3 years.
Yep.
You're just never going to have stability as an organization. This guy's already proven he can take you to the playoffs on a team that wasn't even that good. I know last year wasn't good at all, but they fight for this guy. I mean, you can tell. They really do. So, to me, I am a staunch believer that they need to hold on to Daboll. I mean, I'm curious to get your take, but my pick here is Washington all the way.
No, I'm in that camp as well. I'm definitely a Daboll fan. I don't see any reason to fire him. Would I be shocked? No, I actually expect them to fire him if they have really a bad year because that's just kind of what the Giants do.
I think it'd be a mistake.
Yeah, it's what the Giants have done in the last dozen years of our football lives or so. But I think you're going to bring in a new QB this year. You're probably going to draft them. You want him to be that guy that is there. You saw what he did for Josh Allen. He squeezed the most out of Daniel Jones. I think it'd be a mistake to fire him, but wouldn't be surprised if the Maras made that move. Brian, another 1 o'clock game is the Patriots and the Titans. Man, this is a week of just awful teams playing awful teams. Two teams, again, that are going to be in the top 5. I mean, probably we imagine Jacoby Brissett versus Mason Rudolph. Probably, because we imagine Drake May and Will Levis are still going to be out in this one. I mean, what are we talking about with these teams that are playing right now? I'm taking the Titans. I think there is talent on that team. They're playing at home. Patriots just had a huge win against a divisional rival. I don't expect them to keep that up 2 weeks in a row. But again, another game that is going to be awful. I'm not shocked if it goes the other way. It's also one of those games where wouldn't be shocked if it's 10-9. Also wouldn't be shocked if it's one of those random games that's 40-38. How sometimes how bad teams can just go off against each other sometimes. Wouldn't be shocked at that as well. But I'm taking the Titans.
I like that call. I mean, the thing is, these offenses I don't think are necessarily capable of picking up those kind of points. But you never know in these weird games. And there are a lot of kind of underwhelming games on the slate coming up here. I'm taking Tennessee, too. I mean, I think the reasoning for picking New England would be, well, they come off a win and they're feeling good about that, but the bottom line is this team's not very good. I mean, we know Tennessee isn't either, but they're at home. I think they are a little bit better. I think Mason Rudolph might actually be a little better than Will Levis, believe it or not. And in the game last week, I know the final score, the Lions just trounced them. But early on, that looked like it was going to be a shootout. I mean, Tennessee was 14-14. They were moving the ball, Pollard running it. Calvin Ridley, as we mentioned before, had a huge first half. So I think Tennessee can pull this one out at home. I'm going with that.
Yeah, basically that game turned as most games would. 2 interceptions by Rudolph in the second quarter, bang, bang, and that was it. That was lights out on the Titans in that one. The 4:05 games kick off, Brian, with Bears versus Cardinals in a matchup where, yeah, the Bears right now should be 5-2, but they're 4-3, and the Cardinals at 4-4, leading the NFC West. Who had that about halfway through the season? I guarantee no one. So a huge game for the Cardinals, a lot on the line. You know, the Bears really struggled on offense last week. At the end of the day, the Cardinals are an up-and-down team. They have played well of late. I do think the Bears bounce back in this one. I think Caleb gets back on track. That defense, even last week, was great outside the Hail Mary. I think they'll harass Kyler. They'll get the win. It'll be an ugly one. Wouldn't be surprised if it's another 18-15 game, but give me the Bears to win this one.
I guess this is our second disagreement. The first being that one where I basically just went out on a limb and picked Carolina just for the heck of it. Yeah. But this one, I'm taking Arizona. I have a little more belief in them. The Bears have been very up and down. I mean, Caleb has had his big games where he really looks like that next franchise quarterback that they're so desperately coveting. And he has games where he doesn't look like he can play in the league. Yeah. You know, like week 1, where he threw for sub 100 yards. Yeah. So I don't know exactly what you're getting week to week from them. I don't necessarily know exactly what you're getting from Arizona either, but as you point out, they're in first place. I would have had them last place if I were projecting the team by this point. So, you know, they deserve credit from that perspective. And I'll take Kyler and company to do enough on offense with Marvin Harrison, with Trey McBride, the tight end, who's kind of an emerging star there. James Conner just quietly gets the job done. I'll take Arizona.
Yeah, the thing with Caleb last week is I think he had like 33 yards entering the fourth quarter, and then he kind of just went off in the fourth quarter, led one touchdown drive, well, really two, because he had the swift run, and then you had the one at the end. Could have been another one, but, you know, they decided to hand it off to a backup center at the goal line, because that makes sense. Like, you know, you don't know what you're getting week to week, but I don't trust the Cardinals either. Like, you don't know what you're getting week to week with them either. Wouldn't be surprised if this one goes either way, but we'll see what happens. The Jags play the Eagles at 4:05. You know, I think this is just straight up a mismatch. You know, Doug Peterson playing his old team. I'm taking the Eagles. I'm not picking against them this week. They're the better team. They're going to beat up on the Jags. The Jags have looked like they've had a little more life in the last few weeks, but they're not beating this Eagles team in Philadelphia. Give me the Eagles.
I would agree here, and this is one where if this game is close or somehow Philly didn't win this game, then suddenly the media is back in attack mode on this Philly team, that they're just not good, they're not a cohesive team, they got all these issues. So this is a game that they need to stamp themselves, win convincingly, show that they can play to the level of the talent that they have on this roster. It's a spot where they should be able to, and I mean, in today's NFL, you can never be 100% confident, but I am going with Philly to get the job done.
The 4:25 games kick off with a great one. The Lions versus the Packers. 6-1 Lions, 6-2 Packers. But however, Jordan Love, if he plays, he's not going to be 100% yet again, and he might not play. And Malik Willis saved them again last week. So what a pickup by the Packers there. Great job by LaFleur and coaching them up. That's been an excellent move there. But you're playing a Lions team that is just top to bottom, even outside the Hutchin injury, is just incredible. They are rolling. Goff could throw perfect, could throw a ton of attempts. Last week could throw barely any attempts. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This team just wins and wins and wins. And right now, I think it would be a more compelling matchup if you had Jordan, you know, at 100%. But he ain't, and he's probably not even starting in this game. It's going to be a questionable game time decision. Give me the Lions to win it.
Yeah, I mean, the Packers offense, if you have Malik Willis in there, it's going to be very conservative, very reliant on the running game, which Josh Jacobs, to his credit, he's been a good pickup for them. He's had a very good season. Detroit right now is clicking on all cylinders. I mean, coming off a game where they score 50+, and the offensive numbers, you know, they didn't even need to do anything. Goff throws for under 100 yards in a game in which they scored 52 points because they had a zillion return yards.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that.
It's just on all three phases, this team can beat you. I mean, top to bottom, they have to be right now the best team in football. Yeah. I think even though going on the road against a divisional opponent, you're facing a backup quarterback, you got to like the Lions in this spot to keep rolling.
Yeah, LaFleur said today he's questionable to play Jordan Love, but he believes there is a realistic shot he plays. Even if he does, he's banged up. He's had this whole groin/knee injury going on. I don't know how effective he's going to be. And even the games he's played in, he's thrown a considerable amount of picks so far this season. A lot of gunslinger in there. The final 425 game, Bry, is the Rams and the Seahawks. And this is a game I've really gone back and forth in. So I'm interested to start with your thoughts because you have a game where DK Metcalf probably not playing in this. And then yesterday pops up on the report, Puka Nacua, that knee bothering him yet again. He's questionable to play in this game after the great game that he just came back in against the Vikings. So he's had trouble kind of with his PCL injury all really since that scrimmage that in training camp. The intermingling team scrimmages that they had. He got hurt in that. He's really never been the same. He played a little bit in the Lions game, got banged up, and then, of course, had the good Vikings game, and now is banged up again in practice. It's a huge difference if he is not out there, but it's also a huge difference for the Seahawks if DK is not out there. You look at what happened with them last week with the Bills. So I'm very interested to get your pick on this game.
Yeah, I am riding with your football team. I think they showed me a lot in that last game, the Thursday nighter against Minnesota. Now, albeit that is with having both Puka and Cooper Kupp back in there, so if Puka's out, that does take some of the sting out of the offense. But Seattle right now, without your number one receiver in DK, and I don't think there's enough firepower there. And defensively, they've been very forgiving, I guess would be the best word to use, with a head coach that's his expertise. It hasn't gone very well. I mean, they kind of got abused by Buffalo last week on their home field. So I see a close game here, divisional matchup, but I think the way Stafford's playing, at least he has Kupp in there. The way Kyron Williams continues to roll. Rams are seeing some better signs on defense, too. Some of the young guys stepping up. I'm giving the edge to your team and seeing a road win here for the Rams.
I'm cautiously taking the Rams in this game. I do think at the end of the day that even Puka or not, I know that's a huge difference. I do think they're the better team. Historically, Stafford era, Goff era, whatever it is, they have played the Seahawks really well, even up in Seattle in the Sean McVay era, I should actually say. They have played Seattle really well. I think the offensive line starting, two rookies last week, in Dedick and Limmer, I think they played great. I mean, they were rated up there at, I think, number 5 and number 6 in pass blocking last week. They were absolutely fantastic. You're getting more healthy on the rest of the teams outside of Puka. Cooper is still there. We saw a sighting in Demarcus Robinson. You have Tutu Atwell. Higbee close to coming back, is not going to probably play in this one. And that defense, shout out to Jared Verse and the boys. I mean, they've been playing lights out the last couple weeks. And Jared Verse, before our eyes, is becoming a young star right now. If you're not a Rams fan, you're not watching these games, you probably don't know that name. He's not made enough of a national presence to really know. But get this guy on alert. I'm telling you, this could be the next great young pass rusher in this league. He's a trash talker. He's strong. He's quick. He's smart. I think that could be a real leader for this defense. Kind of, you never fill in a Hall of Famer, first, ballot Hall of Fame guaranteed in Aaron Donald. But this has been a good start investing in that defensive line. Byron Young, Braden Fisk. I like a lot of the pieces that they have on that defensive line. And, maybe they make a trade. There's been some rumors about, Asu Koromoa from the Browns. Do they go get a linebacker there? We don't know. Or possible, just a little side story here, little possible revenge game. Ernest Jones traded to the Titans. Really suspicious how that went. Rams, kind of young star outside linebacker was the guy that called the defensive plays. Very unclear why he was traded. Has now since recently been traded from the Titans to the Seattle Seahawks. He played for them last week. So you have a little bit of a possible revenge game storyline. McVay, fielded some questions. Kind of seemed like he admitted maybe they didn't handle it the best. So also makes it really weird why he was traded. Have no idea why that happened, but hopefully he doesn't come back to bite us, and I'm cautiously taking the Rams in this one. Brian, the Sunday night game is the Colts and the Vikings, and this should be, kind of an interesting game. Colts now with Joe Flacco, I think, have a real fighting chance on this. Vikings, Brian, injuries mounting, really 2 losses in a row, possibly facing a third. Who you got in this one?
Yeah, it's an interesting game, kind of an unconventional Sunday night game. I feel like these are two teams you don't typically see, particularly the
I think it was a
Colts.
flex game,
But
wasn't it, in this spot? I think they
oh,
flexed.
that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, because that's a game that on the schedule for Sunday night I don't see as an original Sunday
Yeah.
night pick. So you're right, it was flexed. I'm taking Minnesota. We know they're coming off back-to-back losses. I really feel like they need to get back to business, back to playing at their best, back to how they were playing when they reeled off the first 5 games and won them all. They've showed some bumps in the road here. The loss against Detroit, you can forgive that one. Loss against the Rams didn't play all that well, but you're back home here. We know Flacco will give them a boost on the Indy side, but I just feel like the Vikings, with their complement of weapons at home, it's a chance to really, show the league that they're one of the better teams in the NFC, where if they lose this game, suddenly you think
Uh-oh.
they're not so good, and they're starting to be in free fall mode. I think they avoid that fate, and Justin Jefferson and company and that offense, they ride to a win here.
I actually think this is going to be a really fun game. 2 young coaches that I have a lot of respect for, and Kevin O'Connell and Shane Steichen. Like I said, you get more of a chance with Flacco. A lot of young, fun pieces. Taylor, Downs, all these guys on the Colts. And then on the other side, of course, Justin Jefferson. Need to see a lot more out of Jordan Addison. But we know in the games that Aaron Jones has played well, this team is a completely different thing. And the Vikings losing Christian Darrisaw in the Rams game, trade for Cam Robinson from the Jags. So they're trying to plug the offensive line in the left tackle position there. I am taking the Vikings in this one. I don't believe they're going to lose 3 in a row. I think it's going to be a close game. Would not be surprised if it went either way. But now, if they lose 3 in a row, the Vikings, they're in the way the NFC has been playing out, they're at risk of missing the playoffs. So this is a huge game for them at home. The skull chant's going to be going crazy, and a really good one. I think it's a good flex option. The Vikings are going to win this one. And the final game, Brian, is the Monday night game. Bucks-Chiefs would have been so much more fun if the Bucks were healthy like they were a couple weeks ago. But no Evans, no Godwin. Even though the Chiefs don't score a ton, I'm taking them. They're 7-0. They seem like they find 7 billion ways to win. Even last week, Mahomes, again, didn't look great. Another pick happens. Of course, the Raiders can't punch it in when they get a gift-wrapped interception. And then they lose like they always do after all their trash talking and, Antonio Pierce saying they have the recipe to beat the Chiefs and all this stuff. They have still not lost since that Christmas game against those affirmation Raiders. I don't think it's going to happen this week. Baker has played well, even with the injuries, but he's thrown a lot of picks as well, and this Chiefs defense is number 1 in the league. Give me Kansas City in probably a closer one than you think.
Yeah, and the Bucks, of course, still down both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, which they're going to be for an extended period. Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs, they keep finding ways to win. I have no reason to think it's not going to continue. I don't think this team's going 17-0 this year. I mean, I think they'll get picked up somewhere along the way. But I also, think at some point their offense is actually going to play better, too. I actually see this as being a double-digit Chief win.
Okay.
I think they're
We'll
going
see a
to
lot of
handle
those.
their business here. We don't, and we haven't really seen, top-level play from Mahomes, but I just have, the Bucks secondary has given up a lot of big plays this year. I feel like this is a game. I feel like this is a game where Mahomes and that offense could really get going, and Tampa just can't keep up with their weapons on the shelf. So give me the Chiefs all the way. I think this could be a double-digit win.
Would not be surprised if this is the game that we see DeAndre Hopkins getting a little bit more involved in the Chiefs offense, maybe breaking out just a bit. And, of course, the buys this week, the Niners and the Steelers getting some much-needed rest, especially for the Niners. But, guys, that is week 9 of First and 10 here. Thank you so much for watching. If you watch all the way through, you know the deal. Our links, timestamps, all the description stuff down below. Of course, comment as always. We read your comments every single week. Occasionally, we respond to them. I'm usually always liking comments on there, at least with a thumbs up. We appreciate the support each and every week. It does mean a lot to us. We are seeing our consistency and the numbers ticking up. Don't think that goes unnoticed. We do love and appreciate that so much. Brian, another fun week, man, as it always is with you doing this stuff. Any final thoughts before we get out of here tonight?
Well, final thoughts. You mentioned it in the open. Of course, the baseball season officially has come to an
Over.
end. The Dodgers are the World Series champions. The Yankees, woof. I mean, too many mistakes. If you're a Yankee
Yikes.
fan, I mean that was a tough
Yeah.
watch. That game 5, you're up 5-0 in that fifth
That
inning.
was a
Boy,
Mets-like
they're gonna
performance.
be. It may have even outdone it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, it was that throwing with Judge missing a fly ball. I mean, that's the one that really
The
stings
Cole
more
one
than
too,
any of the
man.
others. Yeah, I mean, all of them really. But the Dodgers clearly the better team. They're the champions. They take down the Mets and Yankees en route to winning it. So they're not making any friends here in New York.
No.
And then finally, you mentioned the teams on bye with the 49ers and Steelers. Obviously, Pittsburgh has a better record, but I think out of the two, the one I still have more belief in would be San
For
Francisco. I
sure.
think that's probably conventional
For
wisdom.
sure.
You're in that camp as
Yeah.
well.
For sure. Yeah, they're gonna get
Yeah.
healthier. I know Ayuk's done for the year, but you get Debo right. Kittle's played great in these last couple weeks. Maybe you get Christian McCaffrey back. I mean, honestly, who knows? I mean, like I don't even believe them. You have no idea, but it doesn't matter in the I don't want to say it doesn't matter. Like, of course, he's a completely different ball player, but even if it's a step down into Mason or the Isaiah Garendo or whoever in that Kyle Shanahan offense and that run scheme, guys are just stars in there. I do believe that they have enough, and Brock Purdy's just got to play better. He's had some up and down games this season. He's got to play better. That defense, all the money on that defense has to play better. But yeah, at the end of the day, I do think they're a better team than the Steelers. I just do.
And finally, for the Steelers, Russell Wilson, 2 games,
Give him
made a lot
credit.
of plays. He
Yeah.
looks like an improved version than what we saw in Denver. So maybe, just maybe, there's a little more left in the tank there.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. They definitely have a more threatening, deeper down the field kind of offense with him. His moon balls that he throws. It's just a totally different aspect. You lose the running ability that you had with Justin Fields, but I think a more sustainable option, the deep passes, the more accurate timing passes of Russell Wilson. We'll see how long it keeps up, but yeah, hats off to the Steelers, who I trashed on earlier in the season. They're holding on, looking pretty damn good. But guys, that does it here for us. Like the video, subscribe channel, share with your friends if you be so kind. And until next week of First and 10, so excited to get into it. We're almost at double digits, Brian. Next week's week 10. Thank you for watching.